Hi guys, in this video I'll be recapping 90 Day Fiancé The Other Way, Season 7, Episode 14. If you enjoy recaps of reality shows like 90 Day Fiancé and Love is Blind, please like, comment, and subscribe, and check out my other videos and playlists. We'll start with Manon and Anthony. Anthony says his recent attempts to cheer Manon up failed, so tonight he has a romantic getaway planned at a nice hotel, which is more along the lines of what she likes. But he says they had a fight earlier that day, so he's not sure how it'll go. They were in a shop that had earrings she wanted, and she didn't have her purse, and he said he didn't have his wallet even though he did, just so she wouldn't spend any money. He explains he's worried they don't have money and are trying to buy a house, but says he stupidly flashed his wallet to her after they left the store, so she was pissed at him, and he admits he shouldn't have done that. As they drive along, they start the fight again. He tells her maybe he should have just told her to not spend too much instead. She argues that she wouldn't have spent much, and asks why he always thinks she's going to be a bitch. Her voice is really hoarse in this scene, probably from all the yelling. He says he doesn't want to engage in this fight. She tells him he doesn't care about saving them or losing her. In his confessional, he says they tried to move away from their problems by moving to France, but the problems just followed them from Los Angeles. He doesn't have a support system there except for her, and says that support is non-existent. He says it's been a while since they've had intimate time together, and now they're walking to the hotel in a bad headspace. In the hotel lobby, she notices a floor mat that says Love Room. Once they get to their room, it's got crazy lighting and a jacuzzi, and she's like, oh no, what is this? She notices there are no windows, and Anthony says it's also soundproof. In their confessional, she says when she thought about their schmexy time away, she wasn't expecting a schmex dungeon. He says it isn't labeled as a schmex dungeon. She tells him it's better than the mime, so thanks. She notices there's a strip pole in the room, and he says he has a surprise for her. She's like, oh, another one? In his confessional, he says she loves that he was in the military, and loves the uniform, so he decided to wear his military garb. He comes out and she's laughing. Then he starts using the pole and doing a show for her, and she's really enjoying it. In her confessional, she says she appreciates what he did, and when they're good, and he makes her feel like she's home. In the jacuzzi, they tell each other how schmexy they are, and kiss, and seem to be doing well at this point. It was great to see them having fun, and for Manon to not be so serious for a change. I actually like their sense of humor, and Manon can be really funny and charming when she wants to be, but I'm doubtful they'll continue to be joyful for long. Moving on to Johny and Chloe. They're driving to meet with an immigration lawyer to discuss the sponsorship paperwork to get Chloe legally set up to work in Aruba. In his interview, Johny says Chloe's mom visiting put pressure on them to get moving with the paperwork to get Chloe over there permanently. As they enter the building, Chloe tries to touch a cactus, and he looks at her like she's crazy, and has to tell her not to touch it. They meet with the lawyer, and Chloe tells him they want to look into the cost for immigration and a work permit. The lawyer says the cost depends on if it's a partnership or marriage. He says with a marriage, Johny can bring her to Aruba automatically, and that will involve minimal dues and that the process goes fast. And Johny looks at the guy like, why did you bring that up? The lawyer says, in contrast, the partnership agreement will cost about $650, and the process takes 5 months, and she'd have to spend part of that time in the U.S. He says once she's approved for partnership in Aruba, it would take about 3 more months for her to get a job, and the full process for partnership is about 8 months. He says with marriage, it goes faster, but they have to be ready for that. Johny tells Chloe that's not a little step. In her confessional, Chloe says she's surprised how complicated this is, and that she might have to be in the U.S. for a while. She says since Johny broke her trust, they wouldn't survive long distance. The lawyer, who must have been talked to by production, asked them if they'd thought about marriage, and they look at each other. Johny explains that they have discussed it, but they've only known each other a year, and that marriage isn't a small step. For some reason, the lawyer looks disappointed at this. In her confessional, Chloe says they've talked about marriage, but there's no way it would be that fast, even though it would solve a lot of their problems. But she says the plan has always been to get married, and maybe they should just go for it, especially since it would be much easier for her to be legal and work there. Later at lunch, She tells him she's not sure how her mom will react if she tells her it would be 8 months before she can work, and that it would be an I told you so moment. She asks what it would look like if she can't work. He says it's no problem taking care of her, but that the lifestyle she wants with going out all the time isn't something he could afford. She asks if he's ready to get married. He says yes, and she's like, you hesitated. He tells her he's at the age to get married and loves her, but he's not sure she's ready for that since she's so young. Chloe says she's ready and they just have work to do. In his interview, he says marriage is the easier option for becoming legal, but if the relationship goes bad, getting divorced will be harder. He says he's afraid when it gets too difficult, she might leave. He says he was in that situation before and gave that person everything, and they left him for something easier, so she shouldn't think she's the only one taking a risk. They ultimately agree marriage is something to consider and that they'll figure it out. I think both options sound scary for this couple. The idea that she can't be apart from him for a few months without assuming the worst says they really shouldn't be together. Also, she's not honest about how she was also with someone else early in their relationship, like Johny said, so her trust issue is questionable. And of course, marriage would be a mistake for these two. Hi guys! Just a reminder to please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks! Moving on to Pattiya and Dylan. Pattiya and Dylan's mom, Jo, are playing tennis. His mom is pretty aggressive on the court, and nearly injures Pattiya a couple times, as you can see the ball hits her. There's also a moment where Pattiya loses sight of the ball, and there's a shot of Jo smiling. In her interview, Pattiya says his mom invited her to play tennis, and she feels nervous about being alone with her, since she has issues with how close she and Dylan are. She says with Jo calling him every day, she feels like his mom influences him and gets in his head, and is the reason they're not married today. She says she's definitely going to talk to Jo about boundaries, because Dylan doesn't have her back. After they've played a while, they sit down for an awkward chat. Pattiya opens up about the issue from their recent dinner, and says she wanted to say more, but didn't know if it was the right time. Jo encourages her to open up, and insists that she's very easygoing. Pattiya asks what she thought when Dylan told her Pattiya was moving there, even though Jo knew Pattiya hated her. Jo says she was excited for him because he was excited, but says how Dylan mentioned how Pattiya said she doesn't want to be anywhere near her house or his dad's house, and asks if Pattiya said that. Pattiya admits this was true, and says she's sorry, and knows it's horrible, but that's how she felt. And Dylan's mom says she thought it was horrible too. She says she wants them to be happy, and she never resented Pattiya. Pattiya says, well, she did resent Jo because of the things Dylan told her she said about her. His mom repeats that she never said those things, and that her only concerns were Pattiya's hatred for her and her spending. Pattiya says she stopped spending. Jo says, you say you've stopped spending, but you haven't paid the debt off. Pattiya says she would have paid the debt off if she hadn't had to move to Australia. Jo says, so it's Dylan's fault again? Jo then talks about how Dylan told her Pattiya expected him to sell one of his properties to help with her debt. Pattiya says yes, she did ask for that, and feels like he owes her that. But Jo says she advised Dylan against this. Pattiya tells Jo that in order to feel comfortable there, she needs to set boundaries, and she asks if Jo could maybe not call Dylan every day 3 times a day. Jo says she thought they got past this. Pattiya says they did, but says Dylan stops everything to talk to Jo, and she feels like Jo is a needy mother. Jo says she's not needy and won't be classified that way. Jo tells Pattiya she'll reduce the calls if that will help, but that sometimes Dylan calls her, so Pattiya had better talk to him too. Later, Dylan meets up with them, and Pattiya says how Jo kicked her butt at tennis. In the car, Pattiya tells him she was worried his mom would try to hit her with the ball, but that she didn't. I have photographic evidence that Jo did hit her with the ball, but maybe Pattiya blocked it out already. Dylan asks if they got their issues resolved. Pattiya says yes, but that she suggested to his mom that maybe she not call so much, and that she told Jo maybe she could call twice a week, but not every day 3 times a day. She asks what he thinks, and says she senses he's bothered about how she handled it. Clearly bothered, he says it was her bright idea, and that he and his mom enjoy their chats. She tells him this has been an issue for 12 years. He says it's unfair to ask him to stop speaking to his mom, and why doesn't she worry about the $20,000 debt she has instead? He can see the reaction he gets out of Pattiya here, and he doesn't even try to hide his smile. She tells him he got her into debt, and he says he's actually saved her money. She says he's controlling and always telling her what to do. He says she doesn't like him talking to his mom, because when he talks to Joe, it takes control away from her. He says his relationship with his mom won't change, and she needs to pick her battles, or she'll be nagging him till they're dead. In her confessional, Pattiya says Dylan's the one who's controlling, and she thinks he's a narcissist. She says, whether he admits it or not, his relationship with his mom is affecting their relationship. She adds that there's something she needs to talk to him about, and she thinks it might make things worse. What is the trend with everyone on these shows having a secret they need to unleash on their partner? Is that a requirement to be on the show? I was surprised how heated their argument got, and they both seemed too comfortable with jumping into a serious battle like it was nothing. Besides Dylan's mom being an issue, Dylan seems pretty toxic too. I like Pattiya a little better, but she still gets a side eye from me for blaming Dylan for her debt. Now we're with Greta and Matthew. It picks up where it left off, and she's telling him she's not sure she loves him anymore. Matthew pets his cat Apple, and thanks Greta for being honest, and says relationships aren't always 50-50. I love his cat, you guys. She says she can't force herself to love him, and has too much doubt to commit to him. He tells her she's only been there a few days, and they should spend more time together, and that they don't need to talk about marriage or kids, and he thinks there's more to explore. She insists that what she needs now is to be alone. He whispers to her that they've only seen each other with the camera crew around, as if the cameras wouldn't pick this up. She whispers back that it doesn't have anything to do with that, and he says it does for him. In his interview, he says nothing could have prepared him for what she told him, and you don't just suddenly not love someone, and he had no idea. For some reason, she tells him wistfully that they had so much life ahead together, which I'm sure doesn't help him feel better. He says he was prepared to spend the rest of his life with her. Now he starts crying, and it's such a sad scene. She tells him maybe she's making the worst mistake of her life, but she still has to make it. In Matthew's confessional, he says when he put the ring on her finger, he never intended to take it back. Their scenes always make me cry lately. He asks what they'll do now, and she says they'll move forward in their individual ways. She starts packing, and says she'll go to a hotel. Matthew does a confessional at the table, and says she's always chasing a thrill in life, and he thinks the roller coaster just ended. In the preview for the next episode, Matthew's dad tells him he's upset with Greta over the breakup, and Matthew asks his dad if he can talk to her, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, that's it for this video. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching.